The War on Drugs Explained. The intention of this video is to explain the true nature of the so-called War on Drugs. In 1971, President Richard Nixon was seeking re-election with the Vietnam War in its concluding stages. He claimed that America's public enemy number one in the United States is drug abuse, use of drugs other than alcohol, tobacco and caffeine. He fabricated an enemy and declared his intention to wage an offensive in order to fight and defeat the contrived threat. He stated that in order to fight and defeat this enemy, money will be provided to the extent that it is necessary. He was re-elected in 1972 with an historically significant majority. However, President Nixon's efforts to address an allegedly grave threat to health and welfare due to drug use did not apply to the drugs of the majority: alcohol and tobacco, the most dangerous drugs in existence, and caffeine. The war on drugs or drug policy is not about preventing and minimising harm related to the use of psychoactive substances, drugs of any kind. If the war on drugs or drug policy, was about reducing and preventing harm to health and welfare from the use of psychoactive substances, it would focus primarily on alcohol and tobacco. Alcohol, tobacco and caffeine are psychoactive substances, drugs. Alcohol. Alcohol is cytotoxic, which means it is toxic to cells. Alcohol use can result in organ damage involving the brain and the liver. Fetal alcohol spectrum disorder is harm to the unborn baby as a result of the mother drinking during pregnancy. Alcohol use can result in undesirable behaviour due to its disinhibitory effects. Tobacco. Smoking introduces scores of carcinogens to the body. Tobacco use can result in respiratory, cardiovascular disorders and cancer. Tobacco is generally accepted as the largest cause of preventable death. Heroin. I have chosen heroin to represent all the illicit drugs as it is falsely portrayed as the most dangerous of them all. Heroin could be considered a prodrug for morphine, meaning it is basically a delivery system for morphine. The drug is rapidly metabolized to morphine once in the body, so morphine could be considered heroin's primary active metabolite. Morphine has no maximum dose and no ceiling effect, which is a level at which it ceases to impart a therapeutic effect. The side effects of morphine are nausea and constipation. It is not toxic to the body. Importantly, there is no such thing as fatal heroin overdose. It has been unequivocally proven that substantial overdose of heroin does not result in harm. Overdoses of 150 milligrams up to 450 milligrams total dose have been administered intravenously to participants in a clinical study. The study was double-blind and randomised. Alcohol and tobacco are undeniably the most dangerous drugs in existence due to their nature, not because of their widespread use. However, their suppliers and users are not subject to criminal sanctions in order to apparently limit and prevent their use on the grounds of health and welfare. Obviously, the war on drugs or drug policy is not related in any way to preventing and minimising harm due to the use of psychoactive substances. So what is the purpose of the war on drugs or drug policy? The purpose of the war on drugs or drug policy is unequivocally the creation of economic activity based upon responding to intentionally created crime. The intentionally created crime is simply associations with drugs other than alcohol, tobacco and caffeine. The foundation document that defines the substances with which an association is criminalised and thereby allows for the selective creation of crime is the Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs of 1961. The drugs alcohol, tobacco and caffeine are excluded from the document, and its international equivalents, such as the Controlled Substances Act in the US. Using an association with drugs other than alcohol, tobacco and caffeine to define those criminalised allows for a minority to be criminalised and subsequently economically utilised under the guise of the protection of health and welfare. Associations with drugs other than alcohol, tobacco and caffeine is merely a convenient way of defining those who are to be exploited for financial gain and political advantage. It is politically achievable to treat a minority in a way that the majority would not accept being treated themselves. What is the nature of this exploitation and economic utilisation? Interdiction activities, arresting, legal processing, fining, imprisonment, asset seizure, mandated treatment and a large bureaucracy charged with perpetuation of the regime. These activities employ a substantial number of people worldwide and sustain many organisations in the governmental and private sectors. The activities are largely funded by public money. Those benefiting include enforcement agencies, the legal profession, the prison industry, academia, governmental and non-governmental welfare and advocacy, a large section of the UN, and those who supply and support them. In the US alone, the amount of public money devoted to these activities is approximately $50 billion per annum. Currently, approximately 193,000 people are imprisoned in the US in two prison systems, federal and state, apparently on the basis of punishing them due to them having associated with a drug other than alcohol, tobacco and caffeine. The criminalisation of the supply of drugs other than alcohol, tobacco and caffeine results in a global black market in these substances estimated to be in the region of $400 billion per annum. In summary, the war on drugs allows for the distribution of vast amounts of public money and the existence of a global black market in drugs other than alcohol, tobacco and caffeine, which constitutes a significant proportion of the world's economy. The so-called war on drugs is not related in any way to preventing and minimising drug-related harm. It is solely a global economic system based on intentionally created crime. It is a blatant worldwide human rights abuse, and its cruelty and brutality is only exceeded by the aggressive resolve and indifference of its perpetrators in continuing the regime. Above all else, the war on drugs clearly demonstrates man's inhumanity to man.